name is Russell Weil. I'm with Pintail Partners. We are the project manager for Jamestown Pender, the owner of the 561 acres that is being petitioned for rezoning in Pender County. This project is part of what was a 676 acre tract of land that wraps from the north of the Pender County schools all the way back to Jenkins Road. Originally it was planned for a master development with commercial development up on 17 and residential development back throughout the property to the west of the schools. The Hampstead bypass has now been slated to cut through the middle of that property, and there will be no access for Jamestown Pender other than a bridge that they're planning on building at Jenkins Road somewhere in the future. And so as we have looked at our alternatives, one of the things that we came up with and what we have positioned for this RA zoning, which is a lower impact density, is to dig fill dirt back out of this property. The entire property is 560 acres. The areas that we've identified that we can dig in are about 160 acres. That fill dirt will be used locally in Pender County for home builders, developers, and potentially for the bypass itself. There are two access points that we are talking to DOT about, one here and where they'll do the eventual access at Jenkins Road. And the expectation is we'll do 25 to 50 loads of dirt a day, which will be used in the local community. Having said that, I know there are a lot of people with a lot of concerns, questions, so I prefer to open it up to you guys, and we'll do the best we can to answer those questions. When we call on you, if you will state your name so that we can keep it in the notes, and then make sure that you've gotten the sign-up sheets, and when you're done, we'll pass them out to folks in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Laura Visconti. I am here as a school teacher and a parent of students at these schools. As we have it now, our schools are overcrowded. The amount of traffic in and out of our facilities is dangerous. The noise level from 17 is already too high. We have students in our classrooms that have other issues. They are not your typical students because of other kinds of political issues where children are in our classrooms. They cannot focus as it is. You're talking about putting a noise level that is detrimental to the learning of our students. North Carolina school education is ranked in the lowest of our nation, okay? So if you're going to do this in one of our top schools in our state, which is already ranked pretty darn low in our country, what are you thinking that's going to do to the future of our students?
Well, the amount of impact we believe will happen from noise pollution is very limited.
Sorry, I understand, but are you in the classroom? Have you tried to teach 30 students?
Ma'am, if you'll let me answer.
Just asking, where is it coming from?
We're going to have 1 to 2 excavators running at a time in an area that is more than 1,000 feet from the school. The state is getting ready to build a 4-lane highway on the boundary with the school and have many more trucks and then leave it. And I've heard tonight, well, you're going to go for 10 years and the state will be done in 2 to 3 years. Now, I don't know how familiar anybody is with state building projects, but if they finish that highway for you in 3 years, then that's the best building job I've ever seen. I don't want to get glib about that, but my point is, when they're finished, they're going to have 50,000 cars a day that are going to be on the boundary, and we are far back with all vegetative covers from where we're going to be working. So I think our sound impact.
You're driving 25 to 30 big trucks right past our school, like directly in our backyard.
On Jenkins.
For 10 years you're talking.
If
The
Right?
traffic, hold on, the
Yeah.
traffic you're talking about that's gonna be on the bypass is what's being diverted from what is on 17 already currently, right? So right now,
Yes.
one way in, one way out of Hampstead. So all we're doing is moving it from this point to this point, okay? So that's a wash. You can't even play that as an argument because that's a wash. What you're doing is moving it from the front side to the back side of the school. What she's talking about is adding more on top of that.
Well, there are currently 32,000 cars a day on Highway 17. They're projecting 60,000 cars a
That's
day.
because of the natural growth in Hampstead, that we can't even slow down and we're not gonna go there tonight. That's going to happen whether the bypass is there or not. We are having an explosion of single-family and multifamily homes in our community already. I'm actually happy to hear that this is not going to be zoned residential. I have a problem with the mine itself. I'm curious what other alternatives besides the mine had been considered.
We've considered blueberry fields, we've considered.
We would like that. We would like that.
Very few.
We're looking for
If you're
alternatives.
going for commercial, have you talked to the community? Because I think we are desperate for options in our community to stay in Hampstead, bring people to Hampstead, have people spend money in Hampstead rather than drive through Hampstead. We have an amazing tourism up in up in Surf City and down in Wilmington, and people drive through Hampstead and don't stop and spend their cash.
We completely agree, that's why we bought the property.
Okay.
We had 344,000 square feet of commercial, retirement community, various office projects that was planned for this
That's not what I'm
area.
talking about though.
Tell me what you're talking about.
I am
commercial.
talking about restaurants, I'm talking about
Yes,
shops,
and
I'm
that's
talking
all-
about a freaking movie theater, maybe
Yeah,
a bowling alley.
That, when I say commercial, that's all retail, and that's what was planned up here. There's a master plan that's in place now for that in this 53 acres, but this whole thing is going to be taken away by the bypass interchange. It is the largest retail piece of real estate between Surf City and the Pender County line.
Okay, but what I see is another bridge entry point that is eventually gonna be off of Jenkins, right? So you have.
That's what DOT is proposing,
Okay.
not us.
I know,
That's-
but making lemonade out of lemons here for you guys, you have an exit point off that bypass to your property. Why are you not putting in shops, restaurants, any kind of other commercial properties that would get people flying off that bypass and spending their money in Hampstead?
Great question. So it is not an exit point off of the bypass. They're going to build an overpass over the bypass with 20 yards of asphalt behind it that serves one property. So they're spending $3 million for a bridge to Jamestown Pender's property, and the current UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance of Pender County, because we have one ingress and egress point, one lane to go in and one lane to go out, you can only build 30 units of anything.
But there is an access point off of Hoover, yes?
No.
Isn't
There's-
Hoover gonna be over one of the access points?
Hoover will have a ramp and an exit, and it will bring you back down to 17. But there will be no access for this property, and what's coming off of Hoover is a service road to 4 other properties that are along here.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity here for this to be reconsidered. Like, I just don't understand.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
we spent from 2008, when the division engineer, there were 14 potential courses where the bypass could go. And when they came in, they said, we're gonna build it right here and there's nothing you can do about it. So we spent 4 years and our own engineering money to work with DOT to look at alternative interchanges that would allow for that development up on 17. And more importantly to us, that we thought, is to open up east-west connectors to the interior of the county to get all your traffic off of one area and to open up areas for residential development to go back into Pender County and stop locking it all in here. And we were told no, this was what was going to happen, and
Who told you no?
the Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation filed a corridor protection map, and Jamestown Pender has not been able to do anything with their property since. So, and I'll do follow-ups, and I want everybody to be heard. This gentleman's had his hand up.
Yeah, just so you know that, look, this is what, a 10-year cycle on the roadway, it ain't gonna change. It's just not. I mean, unless we've got, the governor in our pocket, they're not gonna change that for us. My concern as a homeowner in Castle Bay, okay?
Mine too.
Yeah.
A lot of
And your name again, sir?
My name is David Noche,
Okay.
okay? My concern is where you're putting the mines in, all right?
Okay.
But does anybody remember that when last summer, I moved in June, and let's see, the water, for the rest of the county, they had to go on, conserving water and everything like that, and we were pretty happy, and we didn't have to do that. My concern is, who owns the wellhead and the water tower that's between those mines and our subdivision?
Aqua Carolina.
That's right. Okay, so we are the people who will be impacted as homeowners with no other alternative for a source for water if your mines contaminate our wellhead.
So,
Are you prepared to put a cash bond to provide water to every home and a replacement system that provides water that we have now?
I cannot answer that question at this point. What we have done is talk to the well specialist here in the county, and at the level that we're digging, and the way that we are treating the water, and this is just for everyone, so when you go in to get the dirt, you dig out fill dirt, you put it in the trucks, and it goes, whatever water is left in that hole, for that time being, goes into a retention pond, out through a filtration system, and back into the wetlands, so it's a zero-sum game,
They said that.
except for a small amount of evaporation.
They said that about a level 4 lab in Wuhan, okay? The same procedures that you're talking about, except they were doing it with bacteria. The problem is that regardless of the depth of that well, whatever you take out over a 10-year period of time, that water that's in those pools that you are creating is concentrated. So whatever's there and drains down into whatever water table we are you prepared, is the owner prepared to dig our well further down to keep it and maintain it as pure water? Because if that's not part of the deal, then what you're proposing is an almost certain contaminant for us. It's one thing to talk about the dust. I'll close my door. I don't spend a lot of time out anyway. I don't like it. But I can't live in my home without water, without pure water. And that wellhead's jeopardized by putting in those mines right at that location.
Well, I'm not an engineer, and I can't make your assurance, but we will have to
It needs
make
to be
sure
addressed.
that we have protected Aqua Carolinas and any wells that are in the area, of which there are a couple others. Potentially, we could be opening this up to the county to dig some of their own wells. So, yes,
Yeah, so my question is,
Your name?
I'm with Aqua, Joel Mingus.
Mingus.
With Aqua. And it's regarding the depth you're going. I've heard you say, I think 15 and 20.
10 to 20 feet,
10
yes.
to 20 feet. So what regulates you to stay at 20 feet and you're not going deeper?
The soils.
So have you already done borings?
We've done borings and we've done test pits.
So your usable soil is up to 20 foot in depth in different areas?
Yeah. And we don't expect to sell this much dirt, folks. I mean, we just don't. I mean, if there's a big buyer, it's going to be the bypass.
Other question, do you plan on doing a groundwater lowering system?
No,
No groundwater lowering system?
no,
Okay.
not to my knowledge.
What does that mean?
Like dewatering the ground, so like the sand is drier when they haul out. So like generally you dig a hole next to the ground you're digging and pump the water out so that the hole stays drier so you can haul.
So we're doing filtration up on the surface.
Okay.
I mean, just for an instance, the aqua wells are at 230 feet. And in the Castle Hayne aquifer that's running under.
Almost
Yeah.
There They're in the
No, it's in the.
And there's
it's in
another
the-
aquifer below that,
You know,
it's
it's
the
Castle
PD
Bay or
aquifer.
PD, so.
It's in the castle. But yeah, it's like almost two.
Okay.
It's 225.
Yes, sir.
Jeff O'Mara, Castle Bay. You're saying that there's no access, we're not gonna have to worry about Hoover, period.
That's a question for DOT, but I have not seen any design that has anything but a service road that will be running parallel.
So we'll never have a truck running up Hoover,
No,
okay? If that's the case, I mean, okay, then I'll drop
not
that.
from our property.
It's not gonna run Hoover, that's
Yeah.
important. Do they have a reclamation mining, surety bond?
I do not know the answer to that.
Well, that's a very serious thing. I mean, real,
What's that?
big bucks.
Sand mine.
We will have to get, this is Mark Hargrove, our engineer, so we will have to get one. And just, I don't know if everybody read the application for the rezoning. Our goal is to turn this back into a conservation property. Those, holes will become ponds and will be stabilized for a conservation property, probably be tied with a Holly Game Shelter.
So where do you think those animals are going to go for the 10 years you're in there? We already have coyotes on the golf course.
And behind my
You think
house.
they're going to like just leave for 10 years and come back when you make it a pond?
I don't have controls over the animals.
Well, yeah, you do.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my question earlier on, Kristen Ruggiero, and I'm here more of, you live on this side of the county and not on Castle Bay, which I feel your pain over there. But what happens, okay, so if it's gonna be a bridge over Jenkins, and that's a DOT situation, that's obviously down the road, that's a bypass consideration. It has nothing to do with the line, correct?
Yes,
Okay, you're gonna utilize it, I'm assuming,
we would utilize it.
once it's made. When you first begin moving your trucks in and out, which route will they take? And what dust prevention measures are going to be, because I've seen the roads that I know exist already in and out, and they run where the cross-country team runs, so they won't be running there anymore, I guess. So and that's where all the sports fields are, and we know that there's gonna be a major dust issue. So I'm just curious if you could show us on maybe a bigger map, or?
Well, it will run, this is where we are proposing our exit at the water tower.
That
And
dirt
the
road, is it that dirt
alternative-
road that goes straight back? Sorry to interrupt. Right past the dump.
There is, it goes
Right
straight
past
back
the
and
dump,
turns.
something.
These blue lines right here are the roads that we would be using.
Right up next to
So they come right down the boundary where it is now, and the other one will be out on Jenkins Road.
Okay, and you're saying 20 to 50 trucks per day down this side road?
That's the estimate, yes,
Is
See where
that,
the baseball field is, it would be right behind the baseball field.
that's
See
correct.
where all
Is that- is that-
You're all
is that-
kids.
25
25,
each way or 50?
It's 50.
no, 25 to 50 leaving
That's
the
100.
property. No, it'd be total count.
Okay, and you'll guarantee that too. But any over 50, you pay us.
Understood.
How's that?
But the truck's gotta get
Yeah.
in,
Yeah, no,
and they
that's
gotta
fine.
get out.
I'm sorry, yes, ma'am. Well, come to you now.
Uterwolf, I live on the other side of 17, but I'm here for friends who are living in Castle Bay, and they asked me to come because they do not drive at night. So my concern is, you say that eventually all these trucks will wind up on Route 17, US 17, correct?
Yes.
How can you vouch for something like that? It's already overloaded. When we had a traffic accident down somewhere in the heart of Hempstead, one accident, the traffic is blocked sometimes both ways already. It happens at least once a month. Trucks coming up
Once a day.
and people going to school in the morning, driving kids to school. Have you ever been driving between 7 and 8:30 on 17 both
I have.
ways?
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
a total block, all the way to Slough Point Loop, all the way to the elementary school. It's impossible already.
There's no
Adding
stoplight.
25 to 50 trucks is outrageous. It cannot be done. It's absolutely absurd. It cannot be done.
Yes, ma'am. And then you'll be next.
Hi,
Your name, please?
My name is Tricia, and I'm in Castle Bay. And I'm concerned about the whole development process. How close is it going to be to our homes in Castle Bay?
240 feet is the closest point.
You've got to be kidding.
240 feet at this closest point.
Show me where Castle Bay is.
This is Castle Bay, that's Highlands Drive right there.
All right, so you're going to be 240 feet from Castle Bay. This is just for the trucks to go back in and out, right?
Well, that's what they can.
Yeah. Hold on one second. So the
What
trucks
is
will
going to
use this
happen by
road.
Castle Bay, period, in general? What's going to happen? That's too close to Castle Bay. So tell me every detail of what's going to happen close to Castle Bay.
Before our property values go through the roof.
Exactly. We need to know exactly what's going to happen
There
that close to Castle
would be
Bay.
an excavator back here digging fill dirt, putting it in a dump truck, and driving it off the property to whoever's purchased that dirt.
Well,
And another machine
okay.
pumping the water to a reserve, correct?
A pump.
A pump. So you'll have a pump.
Okay, I'm not finished.
Yes,
What are the plans once that's dug? What are the plans to put there?
that would become a pond, and then we'll plant back longleaf pine along those borders.
Okay, are we just talking about a digging and sand operation?
Yes,
Okay, so there's not gonna be any development next to Castle Bay in any way, shape, or form?
no ma'am.
Well, that's a relief.
Not by this group.
Not by this
So,
group?
wait, well, I'm gonna come to you in a second. Are you done, Tricia?
Am I done? Okay.
And again, I'm open. I'm trying to work through as many folks, and I'm
I'm
coming to
just
you
trying to
next.
make sure that we weren't gonna have a metropolis in our backyard.
No, we,
I mean, as far as the development in general, future plans, that's still gonna be like, just nothing built on it?
no.
Not by them.
But what are the plans? They're gonna sell it to somebody?
Again, the Pender County Unified Development Ordinance will only allow for 30 units in that 560 acres because of the point of access that it's going to have once the bypass is built. It's essentially getting cut off, so you're not going to be able to build it.
Okay, but we're not even gonna hear the bypass from Castle Bay, right? The traffic or anything?
Yeah.
I wouldn't dare to answer that.
No, I mean, as far as dump trucks, but when that's done, it's still gonna go back to natural land, no development on it, right?
That's correct.
Unless,
Bypass will always be there.
unless they sell it.
Yes, he cannot guarantee that.
If they sell it to a developer,
I'm just asking about the plans for that after you do what you're gonna do.
Let me get, and I'd like to come back to your question. Yes, ma'am, you've been patient. And then you're,
Wait, did we finish with the plans? That's gonna happen
what it was gonna be, ponds and natural habitat.
It's definitely,
okay, so there's a good answer for that. We are petitioning for rezoning from planned development that allows us to do a master plan community, which at one point was going to have 400 single-family homes back here.
that's what I thought, that's why I'm
That
asking.
is not going to happen now because of the bypass, so we are rezoning the property to rural and agriculture that will allow for this digging to happen.
And nobody will be able to build on that land afterwards.
Unless they get rezoned.
Unless they got it rezoned.
Unless they rezone.
Right.
Are there any plans that we know of to rezone? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann, I live in Castle Bay. I want to know, what were the other alternatives that you were looking at, and why weren't they chosen over the sand mining?
They were not economically viable. Again, we looked at timber. There's really very sparse trees back there to begin with. It's Pocosin bays, which is very thick vegetation that's 12 to 15 feet high, which does one really good thing, and it blocks noise. And the portion up front was a blueberry field in the 60s and 70s. There's still some discussion around that of trying to figure out a way to to do commercial blueberry operations, but the economics behind it were not viable. And all of that, again, Jamestown's intent and the way that it could be guaranteed some way in the future is the likely outcome for this property, once the ponds are built, are to become a conservation property. It should be longleaf pine. It should be tied to the Holly Game Shelter. We've been preaching that to the state for 6 years.
So why don't you pursue that?
And we have pursued it until I can speak no more. I mean, if anybody was listening, I would love to hear.
What is their reason for declining that?
I can't answer that. No one's given me a good reason. This gentleman right here had one, and then we're coming to that gentleman.
You said 3 excavators.
I said 1 and 2.
Where, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Gary Satterfield, I live in
Okay.
Castleton. Where on the map are the excavators going and where is the clear cutting going to take?
Well, we haven't phased it yet, but these hatched areas are areas where we could dig. So here, 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 and here.
What was the last here?
What's that?
What was the last here?
This
By Castle.
by Castleback. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Is there any buffering plan for the end of where the mine stops in Castle Bay and the golf course?
We're planning on using the existing buffering. We've got a buffer that is very small by those standards to replant. We don't want to clear any of this 250 feet. So it is in 12 to 50 foot pine and scrub oak trees, and then the rest of it is in ground vegetation that is 10 to 15 feet high that the deer can't even walk through. I mean, it's so thick. So for 250 feet around the entire back of the property, there's going to be no disturbance.
Except for the coyotes.
It's not gonna prevent the-
50 feet.
The,
250.
well, we have no endangered plants in the dig areas. That's part of what we go through with the nationwide permit with the Army Corps of Engineers. We have created a buffer for the red-cockaded woodpecker foraging area that's up against Holly Game Shelter. So, and I'm sorry, your name was Dee?
From Castle Bay.
Stapleton or something?
No,
Okay, sorry.
Diana.
Yes, ma'am.
No way.
Sandy Peters, I do not live in Castle Bay, but my heart goes out to you. I lived in Illinois before I moved down here, and I listened to basically the same song and dance, no offense, from Fermilab, which your engineer might know about. It was a big, huge atom smasher that was across the street from us. It was 10 feet in. It was very, very safe. All they did was smash the atoms. And they wanted to build, no, it really was, but they wanted to build a new accelerator, a new particle thing, going to North Dakota, which was gonna go underneath our houses. But it doesn't really go underneath your houses because it just goes through the ground underneath your houses. And in order to do that, they had to dig 300 feet down. They had to use dynamite. I don't think that you're gonna have to use dynamite, I don't know. And we were brought in, we were told by all these scientists and physicists and engineers, nothing is going to happen. We all have cracks in our basements. Our foundations were not okay. Now, here's my concern for the people. This is a sandy area. How are you going to stabilize the ground around there so that we don't get ginormous sinkholes and your house is in a sinkhole, just like Florida? When it fills up with water, if God forbid we get another Hurricane Florence.
I can let Mark speak to that a little bit, but the natural soil composition around the area, so you're only digging down to where the sand stops. And then we have a hard, thick, clay-like composition of the soils in eastern North Carolina that these are naturally, and I don't know how familiar everyone is with Carolina bays. So there's a lot of different theories on how these bays were formed. Maybe meteorite shower, maybe at one point intentions from bad soils pulled out, but they filled back in with sand. anywhere from 5 to 20 feet deep, and then they rest in a very loamy clay soil that anchors around that. And what they've done is they've built up with extreme ground vegetation over the last 100 years that is what we refer to as scrub. And so part of what you do when you go in and build impoundments like they have done in Holly Game Shelter and they've done in farms all over eastern North Carolina, is you're taking that sand out and you're stabilizing it back with water.
I'm not an engineer, but that does not sound stable to me.
But they'll have to treat one side, so it won't be anything vertical, and it's only going 20 foot deep. And water in the areas that they'll dig will not be like 40, 50, 60 acres at a time. They'll just be digging in a small area at a time. That's it.
So a lot of little holes or
Excuse me?
a lot of little holes?
So
They'll
remember, yeah,
They'll just kind of phase it. They'll just start at one end and start digging the other way. And they can set the dike up. So once they finish, it will go ahead and start reverting back to a pond.
and a 3 to 1, what Mark
But
means
that's
is
ground shifting.
there's 3 to 1 slope. So it's not like you go in and dig a hole like that has a vertical slope.
Right, but if you're taking out, how much, first of all, how much do you plan on taking out? That would be one question. Number two, that's gonna be a hole, and you say that it's okay with water, but I wouldn't wanna live there. I'm sorry, that would make me very nervous to be
It's the
living.
same thing that was done on every pond and lake that exists in Castle Bay today. I mean, this is the same thing that happened when Randy Blanton went in and cleared out Castle Bay 25 years ago and took 350 acres and turned it into a golf course, roads, and ponds.
But he doesn't maintain what he was done. He promised to maintain all the little creeks and stuff, and it's growing together, so.
Now, and I understand that, and that's certainly a problem in ongoing maintenance, one second. But it's the same operation, so the lakes and ponds that you enjoy on your property now are essentially what will be left on this property. Yes,
I
ma'am.
just wanted to follow up back to the trucks coming in on the dirt road that runs behind the sports complexes, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
And what is the sand mitigation, if there is such a word or a design as that? Because that is extremely close. And yes, there'll be noise. There'll be noise from the bypass. I'm hoping, we're all hoping, that maybe there'll be some kind of sound barrier when and if the bypass ever gets completed to this point. But that's a dirt road that runs directly there. I mean, it's very close to the complex. And there will be dust and there will be noise. And I'm just wondering what plans to improve that road exist.
We're still working through that, but we'll work through that with DOT and with the schools and, because that's an obvious issue. So those roads will have to be built up.
And an egress and, access to 17, that's not just.
Correct.
I mean, I can't come up with one that would actually ever work, but there's gotta be something. So how long would some kind of road construction like that take before you could actually get trucks in and out of there?
Probably 3 to 6 months.
So it's not a major road construction situation?
No, we don't want to put a major road in there that's going to go away.
Well, I'm saying, how will 25 to 50 trucks per day access Route 17 safely?
There's no
Through that,
there.
through
There's a
that
little
access
gate and a
points.
little tiny dirt road right now, is what I'm thinking?
There's no stoplight at that intersection,
No.
so
Yeah.
those trucks are all gonna turn right into traffic that doesn't stop.
2 to 3 an hour.
2 to 3 trucks an hour.
Oh my God.
And 2 extra
Excuse me for a
days.
second.
Yes, ma'am.
My name's Polly. I was the,
I'm sorry, let's let everybody speak.
my name's Polly. I just came in, so I don't want to reinvent the wheel on questions asked.
You're
But
fine.
I am the first original homeowner on the Highland side. So 15 years I've been in Castle Bay. This is the third time that this has come up, as you know, and everybody else knows. And it's been put to rest, and it seems that this is the most serious. If you had to give a percentage of this happening, yes or no, out of your mouth right now, what would you say out of percentage of 100% if this is going to happen?
I have no idea. I wouldn't know how to grade that.
And
Does
the
anybody-
next step is go talk to the commissioners, because they're the ones that are having to approve that zone change. If they don't approve it.
No,
then
and I get that, and that's already been,
Yeah.
15 years ago we did it, and then we
Yeah.
did it 11 years ago, and then 3 years ago it came up. So it looks like we're closer now than we have been before, but the buck has to stop, or someone's gonna say that this is the percentage of it's gonna happen. Is this just gonna happen, and you're all trying to see us to make us all feel better, and it's gonna happen? Or do we really and truly have a vote? If you had to give a percentage and you lived in the neighborhood, what percentage would you say it's gonna happen?
I wouldn't put a percentage on it. I would
Who,
definitely,
anybody in this room could put a percentage on it? There's gotta be someone.
I would definitely say that you're right, the county commissioners have the ultimate approval on this. And you talk to your state level. Talk to them about what they're building right behind the schools and how the bypass can interact. Jamestown
So if
Pender
they
is-
say yes, do you say yes?
I've worked with the county for the last 8 years to find out if there are alternatives that we could do to keep us from this point. So, we've looked at land swaps to give the school more property, we've looked at opening up ball fields, we've looked at different things that would create less traffic, less development. Now we've given up pretty much all our development rights going back to rural agriculture, and we're just trying to do the best we can with the property we have. Yes, ma'am.
How much of property do you own there? Can you outline it with your finger and show me?
I can. So these yellow lines are the bypass coming through,
Yes.
and our property line is this blue
Before
line
it was
that
always
goes
10 and 20.
all the way up
This is
around
15 years the same.
and comes down
It depends on
and
how
comes
hard we
over
work
this way.
to stop it.
So, and all the way down to here.
Okay.
So the entire property is 676 acres. What we did is cut out the piece that the corridor protection map is going to take. And understand again, folks, that the corridor protection map, this is a legal thing that was filed with the county that put a stop to any development that Jamestown could do. So Jamestown Pender's property was taken back in 2011, pure and simple. And one person asked earlier what the compensation was. The state paid Jamestown Pender $135,000
Oh, God.
as compensation for our property.
That's
671 acres. What's that?
That suit hasn't been settled yet.
It has not been settled because
That's what I thought.
we didn't accept the
Your
$135,000.
question is what percentage?
So-
Yeah, I was
Depends
just,
on the
yeah,
lawsuit.
right.
So, but understand that this entire property, even if it doesn't have a road on it, you're not gonna be able to access it from this entrance at the school all the way up past Transfer Station Road. So the only way to get back onto 17 that way is gonna be off of the bypass. So, yes, ma'am. You want me to go back to the other one? Okay. And I appreciate everybody's patience tonight. I know this is not easy, and I am very sincere when I say I want to hear your input, and we are open to working with the public and working with the county.
Okay, understanding where your property is there, could you not move your excavation to the right of your map more to get it away from Castle Bay and away from the school?
Please.
So, we are bound by where the soils are, where the good filter is. So that's what's been identified in these hatched areas. And these are all wetlands that we're not going to.
Wetlands there.
Right, these green areas are all wetlands. We're impacting less than 0.4 acres of wetlands in the entire project. So, I know nobody is going to believe me, but we have spent years trying to ecologically engineer this for the lowest amount of impact that we can leave on the property. Yes, ma'am. I'll come back to you.
Several things. I just sat down. So
Okay.
It might be repeat. First, can you identify who you are?
I'm Russell Weil with Pintail Partners, the developer, project manager for Jamestown Pender, the owner of the property.
Is there anybody here from Pender County?
No.
Yes, Sam Shore, the long range planning, and Abby, the planning director, are in the back.
My other question is the effects of all of this. When I went online, it said that it would affect water pollution would be one thing, air pollution, it would contaminate our surface water, leakage of chemicals from the mining, and that it would have lead and arson in it, and sinkholes, and major flooding could happen, and bridges and dikes and roads would be in harm, and the wildlife, it said the wildlife would leave. And like you said, with the wetlands there, somewhere I read that once you mine the sand, that the water goes under and drains out, so there would be less water there. So that means that the wetlands, that the wildlife and stuff there would also be in danger. So people that have allergies, it would be detrimental to them. I'm one of them that have allergies real bad.
Where else can you put this? Where else can this go? And thank you for coming, by the way. I didn't say thank you. I came off as. But
Well, you
where
have
else?
existing bar pit sand mines back up Hoover Road.
Yeah.
It could be applied for anywhere in the county where there is already a rural agricultural zoning, which is most of everything west of the end of Hoover Road and.
But is Shingleton now going to be able to increase what he does because of what you do?
No, he's done.
At the end of Saps Road.
What, is he on the left when you're going down or the right?
He's
it-
on,
is
when
it
you go
Yes.
down to the end of
is it
Saps.
I
Joe?
have a question.
Is it Joe or Farnell?
It's Farnell, on the end of Saps.
He's
Sure.
his second cousin.
Yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off, but in the interest of everybody's time, let's focus on this project.
But you
Yes, ma'am.
didn't answer my questions about the defects.
Can I come back to you? Okay. So, first and foremost, we believe this to be a low-impact project. This is not a mine where any chemicals are used. You are digging out the dirt that is there, and there is a replacement with water. As Mark has mentioned, we use 3-to-1 slopes on all of the edges, so you're not digging straight down and leaving a pit. The water filtration goes right back into the existing wetlands. These are no different than the lakes and ponds that exist on Castle Bay. At this time, that dirt was used to grade your golf course, to put in the roads for where your home's set. Same thing has happened with impoundments back up in Holly Game Shelter that have been built for wildlife. So this is not a Martin Marietta type operation. Somebody mentioned dynamite earlier. You can't use dynamite in an operation like this. So again, we dig till the sand is there, and if we put a limit on it, we're willing to talk about those things. We're willing to talk about buffers. We are concerned with our neighbors. But no, I think that the water pollution, the worry about the aquifers, the depths we're talking about, we don't have concerns there. And we have to go through the Army Corps of Engineers and the Division of Water Quality with the state and a number of other agencies in order to get to the permit for this also. So this is the first step, which is, again, we're taking it from a planned development zoning, which is the highest density zoning in the county, to the lowest density zoning in the county, which is rural and agriculture. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is where I'm a little confused. So is the zoning already in your favor to do this?
No, it's planned development.
Okay.
Now, we could dig and create some pits back there, but it would leave it at a planned development zoning, and we feel like it ought to be a conservation property at the end of that.
Okay. So what happened in Castle Bay with the clearing, I know that even though the residents who flooding their neighborhood wasn't for clearing a lot like that and that much of wildlife to be dispersed. So even if that's your, balance, it seems that they're already dealing with water issues from their ponds and their runoff. And so if you have all these holes now that's filling with water, that's not being filtered, it's kind of stagnant water. We saw it back behind Crown Point, where it just sat there and it turned green. There was algae and there was a lot of, yuck. So the people in Castle Bay are going to have those ponds sitting stagnant water behind their homes. I mean, we live in an area where mosquitoes and snakes are, so now they're going to have to deal with that because what is now vegetation that absorbs and drinks all the water that's there is not going to be there anymore. You might add lovely bushes to replace that eventually, but there will be giant holes of water behind all of your properties, which will inhabitat things that you don't necessarily want in your backyard, which is only 250 feet away from you. So I'm just trying to understand that, yes, the noise and the pollution is going to cause a lot of illnesses for all of us. Allergies, students with asthma, students with, with issues with understanding all of the noise and the background. You are all going to deal with possibly your water contamination, the mosquitoes, the outbreak of mosquitoes and what they're carrying and the diseases. I mean, there's a huge amount of things that are going to be infected. And you cannot tell me, because we all live in neighborhoods that were developed, where they take out filter or they put in filter and change the topography of all of our land here in Hampstead. We've seen it over the past 20 years. It is not good for Hampstead. We are seeing more flooding. We are seeing sinkholes. Our middle school already has sinkholes that they're on the property that they have to deal with. So you're changing that with heavy machinery and heavy trucks. If you think for 1 minute you're not jeopardizing the safety of the children and the residents of Hampstead, I think you're fooling yourself. And I think that it's, it should be illegal what you're doing.
And she's just one representative. She lives in Pelican Reef, and thank you, Laura, for being here, because it's not just Castle Bay people that are concerned about this. It's the entire community. We stick together. This is not going to go away with just people bitching from Castle Bay. It's people like Laura, thank you, and from other neighborhoods that are coming here that are fighting for us. If this room was bigger, if you had chose the high school, you'd fill the auditorium and the gyms and the parking lots. You guys chose the right location. But people from other neighborhoods are concerned just as much as the Hampstead as Castle Bay.
And I'm going to leave so that other people can get in. Thank you very much for your
Thank you very much. So we've still got some folks that haven't been able to speak. If you came in late, please keep your seat. But we're trying to kind of shuffle everybody in and let everybody have the same amount of time.
One more thing, are you posting any kind of bond or insurance for any kind of damage that repercussions that happen to us just by happenstance because of what you're doing?
There will be bonds involved with the process. I don't know the exact amounts of what they'll be yet.
Dennis, give me a bit
I think the 7:30 has been canceled, so.
Can you just hold on a minute?
Yeah.
They got like 50 people.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to leave right now, if you're done, you go so we can get these more people in.